If you're seeing this, that means I didn't get copyright struck. Well, that's gonna be hell of an opening to a video, if it gets left in there. Welcome back, everyone. I am recording like a madman, trying to get content for this channel up, and this one I feel like is clickbaity, but it's not intentionally so. I mean, I guess it is kind of, but not really. Let's just get into it. Please remember to support the video either by boosting it in the algorithm, or checking out the merch store, or becoming a channel member. I only have 2 merchandise t-shirts in my possession at this current moment, so I made sure to wear the one that includes the anime girl MS-chan, one of my channel mascots in it. So, you know, if you want to support me, do any number of the things that I am highlighting on the screen. What do I want to talk about? Well, that thumbnail kind of promised a lot, so I want to do a roster revisited video. But, of course, I can't just leave it as a simple roster revisited for, you know, a basic fighting game like Street Fighter 6 or any of the Tekken games or whatnot. No, we're going to revisit a roster for a game that doesn't actually exist.
It's false. No way. Not this time. We created it.
And couldn't exist, if I'm being 100% honest, for content reasons and legal reasons, I think, more importantly, because I think all of these properties that we're going to be going over very briefly are not owned by any of the same corporations, at least here in the United States, I think. If you recognize this guy right here, you have good taste. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You have good taste. When I was a young teenager, i.e. when I was still in high school, I was very much interested and intrigued by the anime subgenre of ecchi. If I'm being completely honest, and I haven't decided this yet, I'm probably going to have to age restrict this video slightly, i.e. put the PG-13 rating at the beginning of the video. If you're already silently judging me, or if you're a person who doesn't know what ecchi is a subgenre of Japanese anime. Don't quote me on this, but I do believe ecchi means pervy or somewhat sexual. To put everyone's minds at ease, it basically just means anime for guys that really love boobs and minimally clothed, sexually attractive female. No, it isn't called hentai.
And it's art.
That is obviously a little bit beyond the pale, but ecchi has
the goddamn common courtesy
to at least try to include some semblance of story within it. And like I said, as a teenager in high school, I watched a lot of the stuff. Most of it gets mocked somewhat fairly by normie anime fans and denizens of Tumblr, as well as denizens of Twitter/X that were not native in the population but transferred over after the demise of Tumblr. Thus, you may be surprised to know that I actually was interested in the concept of a fan service fighting game. What I mean by that is a fighting game that highlighted and included several of the characters from many of the shows that I watched within the ecchi subgenre, without hyper-focusing necessarily on girls spilling out of their tops. Yes, believe it or not, this roster/rosters that we're about to go over actually incorporate male characters, one of which is Issei Hyodo from High School DxD. So just to start, I have a LibreOffice document written in the .wps format for Microsoft Works word processor, as I have covered in the past, that I drew up before we get to the other part of the video, and anyone who has watched any of my previous episodes of Roster Revisited knows what program I'm talking about. In truth, I do not fully understand the context and formatting of this piece of documentation. This part's a little bit more self-explanatory. I think this part up here at the top. I probably wanted to do more with it, but I never did. This video is going to partially be me trying to remember characters from these various shows and hopefully explain what I thought they might look like in a fighting game context. For complete clarity before I go back to that, I think the theory in my head was that I was building a sort of concept for a 2-dimensional / 2.5D normal fighting game. On this channel, I have primarily covered mostly 3D fighting game ideas and content by means of the Godzilla franchise, which is obviously far more serious than this, I think, ostensibly is, or was going to be. I'm not quite sure. Basically, think of it as Guilty Gear or Blaze Blue combined with Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, because that was the 2-dimensional fighting game that I had the most experience with before my teenage years. But clearly, I enjoyed some of these ecchi fan service kind of shows to a significant enough degree that I wanted to make a fighting game dedicated to many of the characters therein. Obviously, the first two should require no introduction whatsoever, but Issei Hyodo from the High School DxD series, I'm not quite sure what this kind of table grid is meant to be showing off in terms of information, because as you can see, Boosted Gear Issei is the only character in the second row. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Issei was supposed to have, in this non-existent game, a transformation gimmick, kind of like how Arsene accompanies Joker in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and how Sephiroth in the same game gets like the one-winged angel wing. If I recall correctly, I believe Issei's boosted gear was meant to be a transformation gimmick. I know I'm referencing Super Smash Bros. A lot, but I believe it was supposed to be kind of like Sheik and Zelda as they functioned in a pre-Super Smash Bros. 4 world, except I think there was a timer connected to the transformation, so Issei could transform, but it would have like a cooldown, and then he wouldn't be able to immediately transform back into Red Dragon Emperor Scale Mail Issei. For the record, this has no connection whatsoever, but my Twitter / X username, Red Dragon Emp 97, is obviously a reference to Issei Hyodo and the Red Dragon Emperor of High School DxD. Rias needs no introduction. Even if you don't like High School DxD, which I do, I still think it's actually a rather decent show, at least the first 2 seasons of it. If you were going to include prolific, top-heavy fan service anime characters, and especially if you were going to include Issei at all, you're kind of almost required to include Rias as a consequence of that. Curiously though, I also included Kiba. I believe I'm saying that right. It's been a long time since I've watched any of these shows that I will be talking about and mentioning in this video, but I believe his name is Kiba. I can't remember his surname, but Kiba was the result of some kind of Holy Sword Excalibur reproduction project within the lore of the universe of High School DxD. I told you I care about these series to a more substantial degree than just, shapely female characters. I believe the reason I included Kiba was just because, kind of like Super Smash Bros., you just needed a sword character. As I continue to explain, it might become a little bit obvious that either I wanted more than just Kiba as a sword fighter, or I wanted him replaced with a sword fighter from a different series. And speaking of sword fighters, Saddleizer L. Bridget, probably the queen of impressively chested anime blondes in my experience, from the Freezing franchise, is included alongside Lana Rinchin? It might be Rana Linchin now. I know I saw a couple years ago a lot of the translations for the female characters from the Freezing franchise got shifted around. Saddleizer is pretty clearly the main female character of that franchise, and I honestly don't even remember the main male character of that anime, nor do I even recall if he had any powers. freezing was pretty mediocre from what I remember. The fact that Satellizer was abused was probably the most interesting part of the writing, but I think it was about fighting aliens or something. There were other freezing characters that I liked a lot more, and I'm not going to clarify why on that. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. I think the reason that I included Lana/Rana is that she was basically a fist fighter. If I don't recall correctly, and people that are still fans of that franchise, if they exist, control yourselves, but I would actually like to know what your thoughts are on those two specifically. Like I said though, stick around, there's still more to the video. The last on Rogue One is Ares from Asobi ni Ikuyo. I think that's how you say it. It was called Cat Planet Cuties here in the West as a result of the Funimation dub. In 100% truth, I don't even know why I included her in this roster aside from the fact that I thought she was cute, and I'm pretty sure the gimmick or playstyle that I envisioned her with was that she would use some kind of faux hammer. For some reason, I'm remembering that she had a hammer or something developed by her species of catgirls. I think that was supposed to be her fighting style, at least at this stage of development of the idea of the fan service fighter. And last but not least, we have Icarus, Estrella, and Chaos from Sora no Otoshimono. Man, that was difficult to get out. Heaven's Lost Property was the name of it when it got dubbed by Funimation, and I'll just sneak this in here. Pretty much every anime that gets mentioned in this video, I watched strictly dubbed. Icarus is the main girl of Sora no Otoshimono, so I feel like she's kind of required if you're gonna include any characters from Heaven's Lost Property. Obviously, you can tell that I didn't finish the top half of this because Estrella and Chaos,
I'm an agent of chaos.
are slated here, but they don't have pictures. Estrella, if I'm guessing, was probably a later addition because Kiba, as I said, was the sword fighter character Marth stand-in at this stage. But if I recall correctly, I downloaded Mugen at some point, and somebody had made a fighter out of Estrella in that context, and I liked it, so I went back and threw her into this set of ideas. Chaos, this is where I need people's help. I believe she was the final boss at the end of, was it season 1 or season 2? Like I said, I only watched dub, but I don't remember. I know her wings were like growing metal, manipulatable metal. There's more to this document. So I have Heaven's Lost Property, High School DxD, Sekirei, Freezing, Cat Planet Cuties, Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple, which I have a lot to say about as we get to that, The Familiar of Zero. What the hell was that called in Japanese? I had to Google it in order to even do this video. Zero no Tsukaima, I believe is how you pronounce that. Strike Witches, Ikki Tausen, and Makin Ki, I believe is how you pronounce that one. And I have, it looks like a list of characters at the bottom here that is different from this list of characters up here at the top. So it looks like I still had Issei Hyodo and Rias Gremory, but I also added Akano, oh boy, I don't want to misname her like I did in my last Hunger Games video. Akano Himejima. And then after her, I included Azazel. Like I said, I stopped watching High School DxD after Season 2 came out on Blu-ray. I'm not going to go into it, but they got rid of the voice actor for Issei Hyodo and replaced him in the English dub for Season 3 Born, and I wasn't really big on that. I think I bought it before I found that out, and I never watched it. I know vaguely what happens. I know there's some stuff with, I think, the Norse pantheon in it, and I know the whole season focused a little bit more on Koneko Tojo, the white cat girl, and I'm pretty sure Rossweiss, which I may be mispronouncing, got introduced in that season.
Damn, look at them titties!
But Azazel's a really strange pick. He never fought in Season 2 new, or did he? I don't remember. I mean, I like Azazel, especially in the dub.
What's he doing? Bali is warping the dimensions. It's a very dangerous action.
Wait, how is that fair?
It isn't fair at all. Oh, what are we going to do with our two fighting dragon lovebirds? He'll have to want it more to win.
Let's try adding another element that isn't fair of our own.
But I don't understand why I included him. Saddleizer and Rana, that's pretty simple. I just carried over that earlier idea. And then we get some Sekirei characters. Well, actually, you know what? I did have a number of these characters made in SSB Roster Maker by Jakor. And as you can see, I kind of replicated the kind of stuff that I already had. And for Azazel and Lana Rana, I just used the newcomer icon to kind of just plaster over that because I never made those and I am not going through the effort of making them for this video.
No, I don't really feel like it.
To be completely honest, I don't understand why Musabi from Sekirei is in that revised roster if Lana Rana is also in there, because just based on sheer memory, I don't really recall there being much of a difference in their power sets. And no, I don't use that as a euphemism. I mean, like, I think Musabi and Lana Rana are pretty much the same in that they just punch things really, really hard. Anyone that remembers any of the old videos I made at the previous filming location for this channel knows that I have a Musabi figure which is buried in some trunk that I just have laying around because I haven't had time after the move to unpack everything. I personally like Musabi more than I remember liking Lana Rana, and I don't just say that because Musabi is chestier. I mean, it certainly helps, but I don't really see the point of including both of them. I guess Street Fighter has Ryu and Ken, which I know is a weird thing to bring up in this context, but I don't really see the point in having multiple of them, especially because, as we keep going, you'll see, I tried to include a wide range of series. Tsukiyumi, I believe that's how you pronounce it, is also from Sekirei. She's the chesty blonde from that series, and she has water manipulation powers. I don't remember liking her personality very much. I believe she's a tsundere or something of that sort, but the idea of a water manipulator within this context, I think, was the appeal to me. Ares, we've already talked about her. Okay, this is interesting. I have 4 total characters from Sora no Itoshimono, Heaven's Lost Property. I kept all the ones that we already talked about, so I'm gonna skip over those, but before them, I have Tomoki plus Panty Robo. I believe his full name is Tomoki Sakurai. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm almost positive I am. But I believe Tomoki and the Robo were meant to be a kind of pseudo-joke character. I mean, just look at the content we're talking about in this video for why you would need a joke character. But I think I figured it like so. Issei no longer would have the transformation gimmick, but he would be constantly in the scale mail boosted gear, and there aren't really a whole lot of fan service anime male characters that would make for interesting fighters, as you would expect. So the kind of chibi Tomoki inside of his girly underwear robot I thought was entertaining enough to include as a character in this. Then after him, skipping over all the girls from his series, I have Ayumu. I believe the name of that anime is This a Zombie? He basically gets the power of a magical anime magical girl, but he's also undead and a zombie that is kind of beholden to, I can't remember her name, but she's the gray-haired purple mute anime girl that can basically kill anyone by talking. She's like if you took Black Bolt from the Marvel Comics and turned her into a cute anime girl. I don't remember her being very fan servicey. That was mostly, if I recall correctly, reserved for Sarah or Seraphim. If I'm remembering right, she was like a magic ninja. She was basically a superhero ninja, but let's just be 100% honest. She was basically just the big boob character in the harem of Ayumu. I think she used like a bamboo staff reminiscent of Son Goku from Dragon Ball Z's power pole, but she could also fly. All I remember about her is that aside from having colossal cans, they loved using mold green in her color palette. If I'm remembering right, I don't really recall liking the art art style for Is This a Zombie very much, but it was very entertaining. I think it only got 2 seasons though. I don't think it ended on a cliffhanger, but I liked it, so obviously, and I mean, if you know anything about Ayumu and the way he just looks, like, that would be a fun fighting game character in total truth. Okay, after all of those other characters, we have the characters that really jump-started my deep dive into this kind of subgenre. Kenichi Shirahama and Miyu Furinji from Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple. What was it called in Japanese? Okay, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, so brace yourself. Shijo Saikyo no Deshi Kenichi. In my teenage years, I started watching anime because of Dragon Ball Z Season 9. I've talked about this in the past in more Godzilla-centric videos, but I unironically think, cut out all of the top heaviness from the franchise, I still think Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple is great. Goated in my mind. Kenichi and Miyu don't really have super duper interesting movesets. Going off of memory, I mean, I know Kenichi has the kind of, I'm gonna butcher this, impenetrable defense, raw aura sphere. I guess you could kind of make him like Spider-Man in a way where he like takes a stance and then reacts instinctively to any attack that hits him. I don't know. I really don't know what gameplay gimmick Miyu would even have. I think Miyu I just included because she's a big bosomed blonde, and I believe a major component for this idea was that clothing damage was basically going to be baked in as a gameplay mechanic, at least a visual one. And then the last 2 characters I have probably the least amount to say about. Ash Blake, the Silver Knight, and Rebecca Randall from Dragonar Academy, I believe. I looked it up right before I did this. I believe that was the last thing that I took any sort of interest in, but if I remember right, I tried watching it online before I bought the DVD Blu-ray, and yeah, a lot of these shows really loved the kind of anime girls get swarmed by a tentacle monster trope, and I just lost interest, and I think that was probably the death knell for that era of my life and my interest in this kind of anime. I genuinely do not remember what was interesting about Ash Blake aside from the fact that he had a sort of pseudo boosted gear scale mail kind of like Issei, but I don't even remember what made him special and why he got it. Rebecca Randall, to be 100% clear, I don't even remember anything about this character losing her clothing, and in that genre, that's kind of the whole point. Before I end this recording session, I think I'm just gonna show you guys who I had kind of waiting in the wings and who was like kicked around and planned by me for this whole idea. And you know what? No, I'm not sticking to a roster of characters. I'm just gonna play around with this. Never mind, I'm just gonna delete all of this. I'm sure to most of you, nothing of value is being lost whatsoever. I'm just doing this because I want to talk about this whole era of my interest and of my life. I think I wanted to include Shigure, the weapons master from Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple, at some point. I guess she is a weapons expert, and from what I understand, the manga for Kenichi did heavily lean into her taking interest in Kenichi at some point.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
So maybe that was the reason I had her in the list of potential characters. I mean, I see the appeal of having her be in a game where clothing damage is a central function. I think I was kicking around having like assists, kind of like assist trophies in Super Smash Bros. Because Nymph from Sora no Atoshimono, Heaven's Lost Property, I don't think I wanted to have her be a fighter per se, but I think I wanted her in there somewhere, maybe as like a background character in a stage. I don't know, man. Ayane, this character, I think she was from a manga called Dragon Rising or something like that. Dragon's Rising, where the main character is a teenage guy that goes to a fighting school for all girls aside from him. I never even really read through the manga. I bought like 3 volumes of it before I lost interest, and I genuinely don't remember anything about her other than I believe she was on the cover of volume 1, so I think she was like the main main girl of the show slash the manga. I don't even think it got an anime. I've talked a lot about High School DxD in this video. Testament of Sister New Devil. I have two characters here, Basara Tojo and Yuki Nanaka, I believe is her name. That was also towards the tail end of my interest in that kind of content. Legitimately, I don't even remember anything about Basara that would even make him interesting enough to include in a fan service fighting game. And I don't remember anything about that series aside from Mio Naruse's knockers. So why in particular I picked Yuki, I have no idea. I know she was like the best friend stereotype, you know, childhood friend from ages past. I feel like the nurse would have made some semblance of sense. I know she got some level of in-lore development, I think, later in the series, but I obviously didn't stick around for it. Another series that I read, I think, volume 1 and 2 of the manga for that I wanted to include a character from, I think, was Sora Nagihara. She was one of the Dere type tropes, if I recall correct. She was like a psycho from a fan service or otherwise ecchi manga, I think, that came to life magically and antagonized the main male character. I remember liking that manga a little bit. I don't know if I ever finished it. I think it got like 5 volumes of the manga, and I think I only stuck around for the first 3. Much like Tomoki Sakurai and his ladies undergarment robot, I think I included Sora Nagihara as a kind of joke. I think the idea was that she would be kind of like Deadpool in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Just going off of very, very hazy, vague memories. It's also worth noting that I have icons for several other of the Freezing. What the hell was its Japanese name? I think it's actually just called Freezing in Japan, except, you know, how the Japanese would pronounce it. I have icons here for Chiffon Fairchild, I think is how you refer to her. Her eyes were always closed, I remember that. And she also looked really good in a bikini. Ganessa Roland, I don't remember very much about her other than I believe she had pigtails or twin tails, and I think her weapon was not Doc Ock specifically, but like sentient iron chains that had like pummeling weapons at the end of them. I just remember, I think she's a redhead, right? She's got like the auburn hair. I don't remember what her dynamic with the characters was. I think she just kind of fits my tastes as they were. But the one that really fits my tastes and is probably the character from this anime that I most fondly remember is Cleo Brandt. I believe she's called Creo now. Creo. I didn't follow much of this stuff for very long after I lost interest. Much like Lana / Rana Rinchin from the same series, I do believe Cleo was just a punching girl, but she was also delicious mocha. I think that was literally the entire motivation for including her as an icon in my copy of SSB Roster Maker. A show that I included a logo for in that document, but I have not, I think, mentioned any characters from yet, is Ikki Tausen. Ikki Tausen. I don't remember how to pronounce that. But I have Hakufu and Shime Ryomo. I remember her last name. I don't remember Hakufu's. These two are, again, just punch girls. I don't remember if I even had an idea for what their moveset potential would even be. Maybe that's why they weren't in the document that I went over. I don't know how well you could distinguish these two from any of the other punch characters. Then we have Yoshika? Yoshika. She was a character, I believe the main character from Strike Witches. I never really got into that show. I don't know why. I think I bought the anime and I watched like the first episode before I even did that, and I just never really got into it. I think that show focuses a lot on girls with butts, and up until the relationship that I am currently in that I constantly have to worry whether or not is still in effect, was when I achieved enlightenment and gained an appreciation for feminine posteriors. So I think Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple and High School DxD were more interesting to me. I did watch season 1 and 2 of this show, Date Alive, and I know Kurumi there, I think she was a villain for at least the first season, and she had like time manipulation powers, which in regards to other fighting games that I've built hypothetical rosters for on this channel, I think she she would kind of fit into the archetype I'm thinking of. She'd kind of be like Hit in Dragon Ball Fighter Z, where she kind of uses time manipulation powers, you know, rewind the clock to kind of strike at the opponent. Is she a yandere? I just know she has like a diehard fan base online, from what little I recall about the time that I cared. Hoka? If I recall correctly, based on what I remember from the Date Alive anime, she'd basically just be Estrella 2, Estrella from Sora no Otoshimono Heaven's Lost Property, which is why I think I didn't have her in that document, because she really wasn't interesting enough to warrant inclusion. I don't even remember her personality. I don't remember the main male character of Date Alive. I do have icons here for 3 characters from the Makan Ki franchise: Haruko, Inaho, and Kodama, who I remember not liking very much just because she was a tsundere and the writing didn't make her particularly compelling based on season 1 and 2 of the dub of Makan Ki. I mean, Makan Ki is a very appealing franchise for a certain aspect of the feminine physique and what it liked to emphasize about the characters within the show, but I don't remember anything about any of those 3 aside from, I think Inaho had like a Thanos Infinity Gauntlet kind of thing, if I recall correctly, and the male character I definitely don't remember. In fact, the only thing I remember about him is that he was so unimpressive and not interesting that I went out of my way to not include him in any way in any of these hypothetical plans. I don't really have a whole lot to say about her, but Mocha from Rosario Vampire, I think I planned on including her at some point because I watched the anime and I even went so far as to buy the entire manga. Like, seriously, I have this. I haven't read it. I think I bought it because I heard that the manga is better than the anime, but the anime was alright. I remember, I think there's like a succubus chick with ice powers, or I think those are 2 different characters. I just remember reading a lot of comments from people saying that that series was ruined due to its fan servicey ecchi elements. And then last but not least, I have icons for Volley and his scale mail boosted gear form. If it weren't for the fact that I imagine there is a potentially interesting roster for this kind of fighter lying in the wings, and therefore there are a lot of characters that you could probably include in it, I feel like it would be interesting to see Volley as a playable fighter, but like I said, I wouldn't want to overload a roster of this sort with characters from one particular specific franchise. Anyway, that's about it. I just kind of wanted to go back over some of those ideas that I had because this is a very random, odd, and highly specific idea. A fan service fighter, like, I'm sure most people would just dismiss this video as a horn dog's ramblings, but believe it or not, I applied the same critical eye to pretty much all media. Now, I may be one of the only people that liked some of it, the stuff in this video particularly, but I kind of have a high bar, high standard for what I enjoy, and as you could tell through my recollection of Dragon R Academy, I'm not afraid to mock or belittle stuff if I found it particularly distasteful. But I highly doubt that most of it gets discussed to any substantial degree online nowadays, and I wanted to sit down and record a video talking about the concepts and ideas that I had in my teenage years for the idea of a fan service fighter, just on the off chance that it could spark some memories or creative thoughts within any of the viewers it might potentially have, which is admittedly a very paltry audience, but you know, whatever. Please consider supporting the channel in any of the ways that I outlined at the outset of the video. Monetary or algorithmic boosting in nature does not really matter much. Like I said, check out the merch, but that's about all I have in the tank for now, and I can't figure out how to get rid of my layout. I hope you guys enjoyed this very bizarre video, I'm sure. Hope you took it easy while you did so, and until next time, guys, I will catch you on the flip side.
She got half her ass hanging out her skirt. Her titties are popping out the top of her turtleneck and shit.